Okay. Um, Welcome to session one, everyone. So today we are going to be going through, my bad. We're going to be going through variables. So basically a bit of review of the Python fundamentals, and then we're going to get into a little bit of Pygame basics. And remember, if anyone has any questions throughout the session, just feel free to drop them in the chat and one of our fellow mentors will answer for you. Okay, so we're going to be going through the review pretty quickly. So if you miss anything, you can always come back to these slides later. So first up, we have if-else statements. So pretty simple. If the first condition is true, then, put out the input. So if it's raining, bring the umbrella. And then the else is kind of like a backup plan. If it's not raining, then it's a nice day. Okay. Next, we have the else if statement, which is, it's kind of like if you imagine that the if else statement has like one backup plan, then the else if statement is like a program with several backup plans. So it's like, okay, if your grade is above 95, then go straight to the output and output an A plus. If not, then you check for the next statement and so on. All right, now the second thing we're gonna do is, actually, without looking at the slides, does somebody wanna quickly explain what the difference between one equal sign and two equal signs is? You just drop it in the chat or sure. Sorry, I'm gonna mispronounce your name, but Sukdeep.
Yeah, what I think the double equal sign means is it checks if like say if like x is equal to 5, it's gonna check if x is actually equal to 5. And then the single equal sign probably means that like it's just assigning a variable to like something.
Yeah, sounds about right. Yeah. Let's see some responses in chat as well. One assigns a variable, other compares variables. Yeah. Sounds like everyone seems to understand, so we'll move on. It's I guess it's more of a thing like, especially when you're checking for equality, sometimes you'll forget the extra equal sign, so just something to remember. All right, so here we have our first quick question. And I think you'll have to sign in to Top Hat and input the join code.
I'll just give a few minutes because on the actual Top Hat question itself, the screenshot is not there. So make sure you have a good look at Ryan's screen before I steal it.
And once again, if you guys have access to the slide link, you can always view the quick question there. 474451. So I just type that in. Okay, yeah. Not sure. Jenny, do you know what the school we're supposed to put for login is?
You can try University of Calgary, but you should be able to just put the actual school you go to. The join code should be enough for you to join.
Yeah, it looks like we're bits.
Did everyone get a chance to answer? Not yet.
Hmm.
For student ID, you can leave it blank, or any number will be fine because we won't actually be using your student ID. For this question, I'm going to close it, but I'll assign it for everyone. So if you didn't get a chance to answer, you can answer once you get logged in. And I'm not going to show the answer right away for those people who haven't yet.
Okay. Yeah, normally I would walk through the answer, but since not everyone's finished, we'll just continue. So next up we have lists and loops, probably some of your most useful tools in Python. So first, I'm going to assume like everyone here knows most of these things, so I'll go through pretty quickly. We have, oops, my bad. Lists basically store like a multiple values. I suppose if anyone's done like any other programming languages, sometimes they're called arrays. And I guess the main thing that you're going to want to remember about lists is that the first item in a list is indexed by 0. So as you can see in the example here, it says number 0 equals 3. And here's just like a few useful functions you're going to find for using lists. And once again, like Google is your friend. So even if none of these functions work, you might be like, oh, how do I take out like the middle numbers in a list or something? Like Google it. You can always come back to this slide. Now we have loops. So once again, there's like two loops. There's the for loop and the while loop. So the for loop basically repeats. In simple terms, it goes through each item in a list. I think there's a slightly more complex definition, but basically for this example, it would go, the for loop would go to the first item, which is eggs, and then it would do whatever you want to do with the item. So in this case, it's printing it. So the output would just be like eggs, ham, cheese, and onions all in like vertical line. So the while loop basically goes infinitely until some condition is true. So in this case, the while loop basically prints up to when I reaches 4 or, yeah. Hang on, let's do the logic here. So I equals 4, prints I. Yeah, okay, so basically at the end, once I is like larger than, so it prints I, which is 4, and then adds 1 to I, so which is 5, goes back to the top of the while loop, and since 5 is not smaller than 5, then it doesn't execute. So now we have our second quick question, and hopefully everyone has a bit more luck with top hats. And here, I'm gonna drop the link in these slides. Or not, sorry, no, the link in the chat, if I can find it.
Looks like everyone seems to have answered. Is there anyone who hasn't yet before I close it?
Okay.
All right, I'm gonna close it now. Nice.
Okay, it looks like everyone got the answer correct, or most people. So does anyone want me to go through the solution? If yes, just type it in the chat, or else I will skip the solution because it seems like everyone or most people seem to have it down. Okay, I'm gonna take that as a no. So I guess those of you who got it incorrect, I'll assume it was like a silly error of some sorts, which I have to make pretty often. So next up we have functions. And I guess like as a reminder, functions are just ways to reuse code. Okay. So just a quick review, we have the name of a function. So basically like what are you going to type each time you call it? Parameters are like arguments that you can pass in. And then you also have like return value. Basically, if you put the return value, then when you say, let me see if I can pull up a quick example. Basically, if you want the when you're accessing, I suppose, a function, if you want like a value like a string or some number, the function to have like a string or a number when you call it, then you want to have a return value. Otherwise, you can just exclude that and have the function say print a bunch of stuff. So for example, in this case, we have a function that adds two things together. So it has parameters A and B. So you input like, for example, 3 and 5 or something, and then if you call the function with those two values, then it'll basically substitute them into the parameters will be substituted into the function, and since it has a return which in the statement, then printing the value function will actually give you the sum. Otherwise, if you don't have that return statement, then you'll just get something like, oh, Python object at blah, blah, blah. And if no one has any questions, we'll go straight to the next quick question. Okay. All right, yeah, so once again, the issue with this code is that it doesn't have a return statement. So if you actually like typed it in, you would just get a, okay, sorry, I do not have the code ready right now, so I'll not spend a bunch of time, but you'll probably get something that says like function at 3 point blah, blah, blah. It'll be like a bunch of numbers and Python will just return you like the actual object. Or I suppose it would be a function in this case. So next up we have tuples, which are basically strings that, not strings, they're a list that you can't change. And I think they generally you would use them in a situation where you're like, I don't want this to be accidentally changed for some reason. So so we're gonna go into our first exercise now, and I believe we'll have breakout rooms for this. And basically we are going to be looping through this list of tuples and finding the smallest x coordinate. So the x coordinate would be like the first one, right? So 22, 38, 18, 96. And just have the code do that.
How long would you like for the breakout rooms to be, Ryan?
I'm not sure. I would say like, let's start with 10 minutes.
Okay, sounds good.
Yeah.
They're open now, so everyone should have an invite to go. If you don't have an invite, you should have one shortly.
Okay, so guess we're gonna be going through the solution. Actually, if anyone wants to like just say what they did in pseudocode, you can do that in the chats. It's kind of like, so for example, you might just be like, oh, I created a variable called, I don't know, minimum x maybe. Sure, that can be, I guess, a full solution as well. Yeah, that looks like a pretty solid solution. Yeah, I guess I'll just go through the solution now. I think there's definitely more than one way, but okay, I'm gonna have to share another screen. Okay, so here basically we have the list of coordinates, and what I did is I made a basically like a starting value to compare all of the x coordinates that we would be iterating through. And so how this code works is it's saying for each value of the list item. So for example, the first time the list iterates, it would be the coordinate would be set to this, right? The second time the list goes through, the coordinate is set to this tuple here, and the third time this tuple. And basically it's saying each time you go through one of the coordinates, you're going to take the first index item of the tuple, so that's what the 0 refers to. So in this case, it would be the 22, and say if it's less than this minimum x here, then set the new minimum x value to the coordinate value. So basically how it would go is, okay, you got 22 as this first coordinate 0 value, and since it is smaller than 9,999, it would be set to 22. And next time you go, it's like, oh, 38, it's not smaller, it doesn't get set to that. Then you get 18. 18 is smaller than 22, so the new minimum x is going to be 22. And 96 is obviously not smaller than 18. So then after the list ends, the final value of minimum x is going to be 18. And so when it prints, it's going to be smallest x coordinate is min x. So next we have the dot operator, which is something that's used primarily in classes. So basically, there's actually a bunch of built-in functions for things like lists, for example. Like if you assume shopping list is a list item, then the dot append is actually calling the built-in append function on the list. You can also, it's called chain dot operators. So I guess in this specific, oh, I'm not sharing the screens, that's silly, whatever. And that is the wrong screen. Yeah, sorry. The dot operators can be chains. So an example of this would be, oh, there. So in this case, if you were to do dog dot front paw dots move, then you'd be saying, basically it'd be saying from the dog class, access the front paw function and then access the move function and call it. Man, this screen sharing switching is inconvenient. But okay, so that's basically what each of those paw functions. It's a rough idea. You can also access what's known as attributes, which are like class variables. So if I were to put, say, a variable in a class like, something like this. Here, let me have switch share screen again. Pause equals 4 in this dog class, and the way I would access that would be dog.pause. So if I were to print this, for example, obviously I need to, I would actually have to create an object for this to work. So I can't actually show that right now. Hmm. So yeah, you're gonna notice that there's a lot of dots in Pygame, and basically it's because like Pygame, you can think of it as kind of like a huge class. I think it's a very huge class. Maybe it's not quite a class, but there's like a bunch of, sub-functions, and each function has even more sub-functions. So when you use each DAW operator, it's kind of like going deeper and deeper in specificity. Okay, so now we're gonna go on to setting up Pygame. And so if everyone can just go and click on this link right now and paste in all of the template. You just like drop a thumbs up in the chat once you are done. Okay, so has everyone got the template copied and pasted it into their VS Code yet? If not, just like say something or put something in the chat. Okay. Yeah, so when you two are done, can you just like put something in the chats? Okay. Are we ready to move on yet? If anyone's not finished, just like say no, or else I'll continue. Okay. Sounds good. We will continue that. I also may have lied about this class variable example from the previous slide. So in terms of class variables, you don't actually need an object to access them. But if you want to look into the details of that, just Google it. Yeah. Okay. 1 second. Okay. So you're gonna see that the Pygame file that you copied has been split into 4 sections, and it just makes it like easier to understand. Okay, so hopefully everyone is following along in their file right now, but basically the first there's the imports, which basically imports some necessary modules to use, including Pygame itself. And then as part of the setup, you have pygame.init, which basically gets Pygame ready for everything. Then you have the clock for controlling the frame rate. You also have your global constants, which is like screen width, it's pretty self-explanatory. Okay, I'm actually gonna switch screen shares and kind of just step through this stuff. Yeah, okay. So can everyone see this new screen here? Okay. Yeah, so if you want to see like these slides, just I guess open another tab because I think it's going to be more useful to show the actual VS Code. So yeah, so basically this stuff, once these 2 variables, they set up the screen width and height. Like once you'll see like a window once you actually run the Pygame. These constants are for like predefined colors so that you don't have to like type in the RGB values every single time. And so over here we have on line 20 we have this basically creates like a window for you, and set alpha makes the like something called alpha, but basically it makes the stuff that's supposed to be transparent. And then yeah. And so now we have like the while loop, which is basically most of the game information here. So first you have the events, which is basically it's mostly keyboard actions. So yeah, usually people actually put their keyboard inputs into the events loop over here. But yeah, so this for event in pygame.event.get is going to return you like a list of every single mouse input or keyboard input. So if you actually like try to print it, you would actually see like mouse movement is an event, any sort of key up, key down is an event, any sort of like scrolling, those are all events. And so in this case, it's only going to check for you clicking on the X button in the top right window. And then if that happens, they'll quit the game. Then you have basically the keyboard events as well. And key equals key press basically returns you a list of, hang on. Okay, you can do that, but I'll just mostly be walking through this. Okay. So I'm a bit rusty here, but if I remember correctly, keys pressed or pygame.key.getPressed returns a list of all the keys that are being pressed. I might be wrong, it might just return the only one, but basically it checks that if the, yeah, okay, it returns a list. And basically it's saying if, okay, hang on. I'll have to check on this, but basically this is checking for, each key that is pressed. So it's like controls for your player. You also have mouse position. So this basically keeps the value, and keep in mind the while loop keeps on repeating itself. So the mouse position is basically updated every time in this area here. And then this is for like the left and right mouse buttons. So you can like put functions into here. And then next we have the update section. Also, would you guys rather I share like the presentation slides or the actual VS Code? Because I know you guys do have like a file for the VS Code. Okay, yeah, okay. I'll stick with the VS Code. So yeah, for these slides we're on now, what the so-called update section is. I guess you guys can review the slides like after. So this is split into sections, but keep in mind like everything, everything here is in the while loop, so it just run like every, iteration, which is like probably like I don't know exact number, 1,000 iterations per second, maybe. That might be an exaggeration. But basically split it into parts. So usually update is like your logic for what's going to happen on the screen, and then draw is like actually making the canvas do stuff. So update is where you would include like player logic. So you'd be like, oh, the player moved right, but okay, let's check for collisions and stuff. And then after everything's been processed, then you go into the draw section and you're like, okay, let's actually draw the character. So as you can see right now, draw's only got screen.fill, and that basically fills the entire screen with one color. And once again, like you're gonna have to be careful where you put the screen.fill, because since the code's run from top to bottom, if you put the screen.fill like below everything, then I would just wipe out the entire screen. Yeah, so what we're gonna do now is make a rectangle. I'm gonna temporarily switch back to the slides. And that is the wrong slides. Sorry. Okay. Yeah. So now in the draw section, everyone can just go down there. You're gonna type up pygame.draw.rectangle, which is kind of saying like go to use the draw module. I'm not sure if it's a module, and then use like the rectangle function from that. And then there's gonna be a few parameters that you're gonna have to enter. And in this case, it's just gonna be the okay. Yeah, actually, sorry, it's a bit different. So you're actually going to create a rectangle object first with rect equals pygame.rect, give it, x, y coordinates with height. And then in the pygame.draw.rect, you're going to do screen, which is basically screen is which canvas that you're going to draw the rectangle onto, because theoretically you can have more than one canvas. You're also going to do the color, and then you can put in the predefined rect object. So if you can see in this slide here, I hope it's being shared. Is this being shared? Yeah, okay. This rect here on the very bottom where it's like screen red rect, you can actually input a tuple instead of like the actual rect object. But yeah, so I'm gonna go back to the code. Hopefully I can find a more efficient way of doing this next time. But what we're gonna do is just kind of follow along and go python.rect. And no way. So maybe we want to go 50, 50, 100, 100. And then so basically, once again, where do we want to draw the rectangle to? So in this case, there's only one canvas, so that's green. We want to give it a color, which I don't think I have red, so maybe I'll go like 2.5. It doesn't really matter what you put in as a color. And then what do you want to draw to the screen, right? And in this case, we'll just put that rectangle. Or rather, it's going to be the dimensions of the rectangle since you're already specifying that you're drawing a rectangle. And hopefully, oh, I think I have to switch the screen share again. Okay, I will switch the screen share. There you have your rectangle, right? So once again, 50, 50 is the coordinates of the top left corner. And then you have the width and height, 100, 100, and the color happens to be pink. So no one has any questions, we will go on. Okay. Yes. So another thing that's useful about having like a pygame.rect object is you can actually access the x and y coordinates and the width and height by doing like, so you do the object. In this case, the object name is rect because we named it rect, so RECT. And then use the dot operator to access the attributes of the rectangle. And you can kind of just experiment. So for example, if okay, you can actually here. So if you put like, for example, the rectangle into the setup instead and do manipulated, change the like rectangle, say .x in the draw section, then you'd actually be able to do stuff like make the rectangle move across the screen or make it grow bigger and stuff. So I might just try that right now. Put this above the while loop. I consider this a setup, right? So you got that. And then down here, you might be like, okay, so yeah, this is drawing the rectangle and I want to do rect.x plus equals 1. So I'm just gonna share the whole screen. Hopefully this works. And let's see. I guess like before I run this code, does anyone want to make some predictions as to what will happen? I have to view the Zoom chat. And why? Why just a black screen? Okay, we're gonna try this. So let's create some moving rectangles. So I guess basically the step that we have to pay attention is to first we created a rectangle object here before the game loop actually runs. And down here we're saying every time the loop runs, we want to change the rectangle.x by 1. So in this case, if you see like how it's 50-50, which actually start changing 51, 52, 53, right? And then after that, we're just going to draw the rectangle each time. Now, Oh, okay, so we have our next exercise and kind of already gave a bit of a hint, but you're gonna want to make your rectangle move around, and as a bonus, have like some logic that detects when it hits the edges of the screens and makes it bounce. How much longer? Yeah, so I think we can actually have maybe like 20 minutes for this breakout room. Hang on. Oh, I think this is actually is this the end of session exercise? Yeah, okay, we can get 20 minutes in session to work on this. End of our session. So okay, so this marks the end of our session. And so you can submit your code for this exercise here into this form. Just to clarify. Yeah, okay, so it's only going to be this exercise here that you have to, if you want to submit the Tuba one for feedback, you can, but we're going to be looking for the Pygame practice exercise. And if you're able to get all of these, if you're able to get the rectangle just moving, then you can be eligible for the full 50 points. Assuming your code is like fairly legible. I would say generally don't need to worry too much about that, but it's nice to include say comments and spacing is kind of a personal thing, but if you really want to get serious about it, there is Python documentation. All right, sure, I can upload the link, but it is actually, oh, maybe it's, yeah. Oh, sorry, bleh. I might just be able to put into the Discord actually. Put into the general Discord server. So if anyone hasn't joined the Discord already, just make sure to do that. And the bot commands thing for getting into groups is unfortunately broken at the moment. So you can just like maybe DM your mentors and in the Discord if you have any questions. Okay, so